So, this is a positive wrestling channel, but that doesn't mean we can't search deep in our tum-tums and get to the end of some feuds and go, oh my gosh, that was pretty damn bad. So, just for fun today, of course, make sure you join in the comments as well, and please do hit that subscribe button, because remember, wrestling is the most important of the non-important things. But, back in 2010, during the SummerSlam main event, do you know what people are still mad about 15 years later? John Cena versus the Nexus. Now, I get this. I actually think it would have been better if it had just been Wade Barrett versus John Cena, and John Cena would have won. Now, I wouldn't have advocated for that, but because we had so many people in the Nexus that could have actually become stars, for John Cena to beat all of them, everyone's just a bit like, I don't really understand what's going on, and it's out there. You can Google it right now. The internet is your friend. Even Chris Jericho and Edge were like, yeah, I think maybe the Nexus should win, all things considered, and he slated in an interview recently, I think with, I'm not going to mention it, sorry I forgot, I think it was Inside the Ropes. If I'm wrong, just hate me, I'm an idiot. But he mentioned at one point they'd been told they had winning, so who the flub knows what would have gone down. Now listen, I'm not going to get mad about something we did back in 2010. However, I was watching at the time, and I do remember scratching my bald head, mostly because he'd been dropped into the concrete, and there was still definitely at least 2 people he had to fight, maybe even 3, if I remember this correctly. But he takes them all out, he beats Wade Barrett, and of course he moves on to something else. And he just left a bad taste in people's mouths, I think mostly because during 2010, the creative was okay, but we weren't really doing anything groundbreaking. And when the Nexus did debut and they were beating people up, and Daniel Bryan was choking people and got fired before he came back to join the WWE, everyone was like, oh my gosh, that was exciting, dare I say it. It felt Era-esque, and all they needed was that big win, especially because it wasn't John Cena versus the Nexus, it was Team WWE versus the Nexus, so you could have come up with all manners of nonsense and shenanigans, which WWE does love more than anything, in order to have protected John Cena. But also in 2010, John Cena didn't need protecting. He was John flipping Cena. He could have lost to a dolphin, and he would have carried on regardless because he was that big of a star. So I do understand it. I do think it was silly. The Nexus should have won, and Wade Barrett should have been turned into a super duper whooper mega star. But let's not forget that Wade Barrett went and got himself over twice with Bad News Barrett, and WWE pulled the rug out of his feet again. So let's not pretend it was just John Cena, and in fact, I'm going to take all the blame and put it on the shoulders of Vince McMahon. Bad News Barrett, as far as I'm concerned, was even better than the Nexus Wade Barrett, and we screwed it up too. Number 9, we go way back in time, and this is like when I started getting into WCW, because I loved Sting, man. I thought Sting was the coolest guy ever. I was like 4 years old, whatever the flub it was in 1997, that's an exaggeration, but I was young, and I was like, man, Sting is going to be out the ring for a year, coming down from the rafters as a crow, and he is going to beat Hulk Hogan at Starrcade 97. And he did beat him, but not before there was a fast count that wasn't a fast count on Sting, so all the fans were like, well, Hulk Hogan just won. So why is Bret Hart, that's right, Bret Hart, who is being used as an enforcer role, coming down to say, excuse me, that was a fast count when it wasn't a fast count, when we started again, and sure, Sting eventually won, but it was so confusing. It would have been the equivalent of WrestleMania 40, Cody Rhodes versus Roman Reigns, and it ending with like John Cena giving a move to The Rock, and The Rock then pinning Cody Rhodes, but Cody Rhodes then doing a pin on, I don't know, Jacob Fatu, who wasn't even in the company. You'd be like, is Cody Rhodes the champion? Nobody could figure it out. That's how poor it was. And it all comes down to creative control and Hulk Hogan pretending Sting's not in the right frame of mind, brother, when really he just didn't want to lose his world championship. We know that story. But talk about, this should be number 1. Now I think about it, it should be number 1. It was over a year. Sting was in the ring with his back to the cameras, the old surfer Sting saying, why does nobody trust me? I've been Mr. WCW since day 1, and these NWO are here, and people are pointing the finger of blame at me. I'm going to go away for a while, and you may never see me again. We're like, what? What are you talking about? And he meant it. Then he was up in the rafters for 12 months, man. That's where he hung out and played Nintendo. So eventually he did swoop in. He beat up the NWO. He was hitting people with baseball bats. Then we got to Starrcade and we didn't have him win. 12 months out and we did some stupid, not even a dusty finish, a shenanigan finish, a stupid finish, a moronic finish. I cannot believe it ever happened. At least 1997. So I'm going to get over it as soon as I've stopped talking about it. But it really was one of the worst endings to a feud ever. And I mean, you can argue that it wasn't the end because Sting did go and win it at Spring Stampede, whatever the flub you're calling it. This was the last of the end of the feud, right? It just was in terms of how we felt about it. And WWE couldn't have bungled it anymore. Now, it did have a pretty good 1998, but I think a few fans saw this and went, you know what, this company is never going to survive. And 4 years later, or 3 years later, they were correct. Okay, we go back to 2011, which actually was the SummerSlam main event after the Nexus one a year later, because of course it was John Cena versus CM Punk. They were having a wonderful feud that was only at that point negated by the fact that CM Punk had come back too soon after he left Money in the Bank, but that was okay, we could make it work. Then Alberto Del Rio was here and Kevin Nash was here, and it was just so confusing. And don't forget, they would get back to it in a few months' time, but John Cena and CM Punk were separated here, and that's how it ended, with Cena sort of winning, and then Alberto Del Rio coming in and cashing his briefcase and losing because Kevin Nash was doing stuff for Triple H. Then all of a sudden we were doing a Triple H Kevin Nash feud. Why isn't CM Punk involved in this? And then CM Punk comes out on Raw and he's yelling at Kevin Nash, and Kevin Nash is yelling at him, and Triple H is there, and John Cena is outdoors having a beer. I don't know what the flub he was doing. It was just so convoluted. And if you were watching the Summer of Punk, I talked about this on a recent video. So many people tuned back in because I thought CM Punk was the best thing ever after the pipe bomb promo. And then we just weren't giving the fans what they wanted. And of course we saw this with Roman Reigns, and we saw it with John Cena early on too. That was a little bit misplaced. And to just try and throw obstacles at CM Punk, which he didn't need, was nonsense. And he did go on to win the belt in November, I think it was, when he went on his 434-day reign, or however long he went. But by that point, it really did feel like we're trying to clear up spilled milk. So as an end of a feud, John Cena and CM Punk is one of the best feuds ever that WWE has ever done. They are each other's, I don't know what you call it, but besties when it comes to doing programs. And to make it this convoluted and messy, to use the proper word, it didn't leave you, when you want a feud to end, you want to be excited and pumped, like, oh my gosh, what's next for both guys? This just made you go, I don't understand what's happening. It was 2 + 2 = potato. If I'd been doing the reviews and the wrestling content back then, this would have been the feud that bore the phrase 2 + 2 = potato, because I wouldn't have known how else to explain it. It just seems so easy. As ever, we had to overthink it. Number 7, we go to 2019, arguably the worst year in WWE history, because it is filled with things like this, and I have another 2019 thing on here as well. I should already have 2, but I realised I've forgotten one because I wanted to go for something that's funnier. But of course, was it even a feud? Not really, but we had built up Kofi Kingston versus Brock Lesnar for the first SmackDown on the Fox network in America. It lasted 7 seconds. Kofi ran at Brock. Brock grabbed him, gave him the F5. And I think in that moment, millions and millions of people felt their heart break, so we didn't understand why. So maybe we need to kind of tweak the title here. This could have been a brilliant feud. Who did Brock Lesnar have his best matches with? Smaller wrestlers to he. The AJ Styles match was awesome. The Bryan Danielson match was awesome. The Finn Balor match was awesome. Kofi Kingston is of similar stature. I think he's a bit taller than those 3 guys, but still, he pales in comparison to Brock Lesnar. Why couldn't we have come up with something? You would have had the New Day we could have inserted in here as well. And to have that wonderful win at WrestleMania 35, which is one of the best feel-good moments ever in pro wrestling, and it to end 6-7 months later after, let's face it, a pretty awfully booked Kofi Kingston through no fault of his own. He tried his best just to lose in 8 seconds to the F5, and for him never to challenge for it again. That is just not serving the fans, which is a phrase that I'm probably going to say a lot through this video. It was just bad. Even me, Mr. Simon Miller, Positive Pete, would never defend it. And I better not have defended it then. Sometimes I do try and look on the bright side of life, but I hope I absolutely stomped that into the ground and gave it a brand down. Make sure you go subscribe to What Culture too, and please do subscribe to me as well. It's free, why not? But yeah, awful, bad. Again, it was the start and the end of a feud, so I suppose it does count, but this should have gone through to the Royal Rumble. This was like September, was it? So maybe not that long. At least through to the end of the year, right? You could have elongated it. You could have come up with something. Kofi Kingston at least could have gotten his rematch. It still bothers me today. We did not do right by Kofi. Number 6 is back to WCW. Bash at the Beach 2000, and Jeff Jarrett and Hulk Hogan were technically feuding. I mean, there was no proper feuds in 2000 in WCW. Everyone just jumped from here, there, and everywhere. But my gosh, it sucked. Like, if you were watching it and you could feel that WCW was slipping away from you, but you wanted to persevere, this was like a slap in the face, man. All they ever did was try and confuse it and tell you you're an idiot for liking wrestling, so instead we're going to give you not even soap opera. I like the soap opera in sports entertainment. Just constant kayfabe breaking behind the scenes that we'd actually written, so it wasn't real. And here I can't even explain it to you if somehow this has passed you by. It's been discussed a lot. I think there was a Dark Side of the Ring episode about it. But Hulk Hogan didn't want to lose, so Jeff Jarrett laid down and Hulk Hogan pins him. Then he walks away with the belt, and then Vince Russo comes out and calls Hulk Hogan a piece of shit, and then Hulk Hogan sues WCW for real. That was the last time we ever saw Hulk in WCW. I think what is the worst part about it is that later on you do get Jeff Jarrett versus Booker T for the WCW title, which also makes no sense. And Booker T wins, and Booker T deserved that moment, man. He was busting his ass. he was one of the final good things about World Championship Wrestling. And that just completely got overshone because of all this stupid shoot stuff we were doing with Vince Russo, Hulk Hogan, and Jeff Jarrett. It really does suck. And again, Hulk Hogan never came back, so it was the ending of his feud against Russo, and it was the end of his feud against Jeff Jarrett, and that's what we did it with, essentially another finger poke of doom. And don't worry, that's on this list as well. Even when I go back now to try and do videos about it, which I have done over the years, I research it and I read. I even went through the flipping court case that he had with Hulk Hogan and WCW. I didn't know what anyone was talking about. It is so bad. It is so crap. And it's why Vince Russo absolutely has to have a portion of blame in WCW dying, because the stories were not good. And he actively said, if you are into wrestling for the usual way people are into wrestling, you're an idiot. Well, thanks very much. I'll definitely give you my money. Number 5, we go to 2020 and the Extreme Rules show. This one is probably more personal to me. It's the Bray Wyatt Braun Strowman swamp match, which ends in death. As far as I'm concerned, a lot of drowning, a lot of spooky stuff. I don't really know what happened after this. Then everyone just came back to TV and they were fine. I wanted to throw this in there because the match isn't talked about enough. Now, it's very, very funny. It is goofy wrestling for life. I never want it to go away. But when you compare it to the likes of the Boneyard match at WrestleMania and the Firefly Funhouse match with John Cena and Bray Wyatt, or whatever you want to call it, it was one step too many. And it was more like the Chamber of Horrors that we did with Randy Orton and Bray Wyatt than it was those two. But anything that ends in, any feud that ends in death, I think has to talk. I mean, it didn't end in death. I don't even know what to tell you. But the fact that I laugh about it so much, and the fact that I feel like it's a forgotten classic for all the wrong reasons, I wanted to whack it in at number 5 here. It's a pretty bad way to end a feud with someone being drowned, especially because actually, I understand it happened in the pandemic, and that's why we're trying to think outside the box. But the Wyatt family had built-in feuds, right? And when Braun Strowman left the family, him versus Bray Wyatt should have been serious, it should have been impactful, and it should have had real resonance to it, because how many times have we seen that? Batista, Triple H, and there'll be other guys. I'm going to forget Randy Orton leaving, but that wasn't as good. And this just didn't do it. This was just like, okay, I understand what we're doing. You're trying to get attention because the world is closed down and wrestling is continuing. But now you go back and it's not really going to get you excited, which is why people don't talk about it. And let's not also forget that I bet if Bray Wyatt had complete creative control, this would have been awesome, but he was also always like Wade Barrett getting the damn rug pulled out from under his feet. But I wanted to throw it in there because it actually makes me laugh inside. I actually quite love it. Like, I was going to put the stupid zombies match between The Miz and Damian Priest, but I only wanted one pandemic thing in there. So I'll just draw a line under it. We'll likely never talk about it again, but it was pretty stupid. And number 4, we actually jumped to the Extreme Rules that happened a year later. I cannot believe this was 12 months later, and I'm a bit worried I've got my research wrong. But apparently, I double-checked this. That was Finn Balor versus Roman Reigns, again, at Extreme Rules, when Finn Balor was the demon, and he got up from the floor with the heartbeats after beating up the Usos, and he went to do the coup de grace, and the ring broke. The rope snapped off. And here we are, 4 years later, and no one has ever explained that. Can you believe that? No one has ever explained it. It never made any sense. No one bothered to give us an explanation. We just left it off in the ether. Oh, I just broke Wyatt. It just did. Don't question me. How dare you? Fired. Get out of here. I'll never talk to you again. That was part of Roman Reigns' record-breaking title run too. So there's definitely some caveats and some asterisks in there. That is a terrible way to end the feud. You have to tell me what's happened, right? I don't care if a goat comes down and pins Finn Balor, like a literal goat, not like a figurative goat, like Bryan Danielson. As long as you can tell me why this happened, like the Jon Stewart thing at SummerSlam, one of the stupidest things we've ever done. But at least he said, well, I didn't want you to get number 17, John, because I like Ric Flair. I can understand that on a human-to-human level. Here, I only know the ring broke because, I guess, Vince McMahon didn't want either of these guys to properly lose. We just came up with a stupid thing and hoped that nobody would notice. Kevin Owens has talked about this. He would go to management and say, I really think we need to reference what happened a few weeks ago. And they would say, no, the fans don't remember. Of course we remember. Look at us. We're absolute geeks. So this was genuinely bad. It did nothing for The Fiend as well. And Finn Balor basically had to go heel after this. I don't want to say rebuild his image because he's always been brilliant. But we haven't really seen The Fiend since. That actually gives me hope that when he does come back, we'll present it way better than this. But just really, really bad. Really, really bottom of the drawer. Again, insulting our intelligence. And Roman Reigns versus Finn Balor as The Fiend could have been something that was really, really good. Roman Reigns at that point was hated with the Usos and the manipulation, the emotional gaslighting. Finn Balor was super duper beloved. The Demon came from nowhere too. It's like, why is he back? I don't understand. As you can probably tell, I didn't like this. Number 3, one of the worst matches of all time, especially in 2019, which is that year we've already referenced. You know where I'm going with it. It's Hell in a Cell, Bray Wyatt versus Seth Rollins. The Hell in a Cell match that ended in a no contest, even though the point of the stipulation is that somebody's got to win. I feel like it's been talked to death at this point, but it wasn't even their fault. Whoever booked this also had the red lighting, which didn't work, and then Seth Rollins hits him with a sledgehammer or a big hammer, whatever the flub, and the referee just stops it, but it's meant to be the Fiend. He's not meant to die, and the fans boo afterwards. Apparently Vince McMahon was laughing, which was not the right response, and then Seth Rollins had to go heel. We ruined his babyface turn, and the Fiend never felt the same again. Honestly, all of this was a disaster. I was in a hotel room up in Scotland watching this because I was wrestling that weekend, but of course we always do the ups and downs. And I remember sitting on the edge of the bed going, I must have missed something here. This cannot be the direction they're going. And I was texting my friends going, do you feel the same way about this? And they're like, yeah, what the flub is happening? Never watch this. If you were into the new WWE, let's say 2022 onwards, never go back and watch 2019. Again, I should have put the Roman Reigns, Baron Corbin dog feud thing in here. But this one felt like it ended the feud. Not even literally, I'm talking figuratively, because of course they would go on to do more stuff. But literally, this feud not only went in the toilet, but it ruined characters, it ruined gimmicks, it ruined the public's opinion towards WWE, which was a terrible time to do it because it was AEW's birth year, and my gosh, did they take advantage of that. So yeah, if you really want to have a tear in your eye rolling down your cheek, you should go and watch this one. It was really bad. And even then, I haven't knocked it enough. Number 2, we're going with another classic, WrestleMania 9, Hulk Hogan versus Yokozuna, the feud that started and ended on the same night. Because Bret Hart had just been screwed. He had the salt put in his eyes, so Yokozuna beat him. Don't forget, Yokozuna is one of the biggest big men ever. It's not like he didn't know what he was doing. He was like a proper star, even though he was built from Japan and he was a Samoan guy. WWE's unbelievable. Hulk Hogan walks down, in case you don't know, says, Bret Hart, that wasn't fair. Bret Hart has to go, yeah, go get him, Hulk. For some reason, Yokozuna's manager, Mr. Fuji, agrees to do a title match. 10 seconds later, leg drop, 1, 2, 3. Hulk Hogan is the champion. Now, if you watch this within context of itself on the night, of course people were excited. They just saw a title change and Hulk Hogan was back. But the reason Hulk Hogan had gone away to begin with is because Hulkamania was dead and it had just run its course. It was actually nobody's fault. It just come to the end of its tether. But here, I was just like, what are we going to do now? And by King of the Ring, he drops it back to Yokozuna and he quits the company again. And you never see him until, 2002, February, when he came back at No Way Out. It's just a man's ego running wild. It harmed Yokozuna. Bret Hart never got his match, which he should have done. So essentially what we do here is we took plans. Like WWE was actually planning back in whenever the flub this was, I can't remember, 95 or whatever. And they threw all out the water just because Hulk Hogan got in Vince McMahon's ear. The stuff we were going to do with Bret and Yoko, we never really got back to it properly. So it just sucked, man. And you can even argue that it was Hulk Hogan that ended the Yokozuna Bret feud, and they had put in the work. I'm not saying that was the greatest feud of all time, but it was decent enough, and it kind of served as a main event here. And Bret Hart as the champion, Yokozuna felt like an intimidating challenger, and you knew that Mr. Fuji was going to cheat. So all of a sudden injecting Hulk Hogan, which hadn't been teased, hadn't even hinted at, and then coming out onto the other shows and being like, wait, if you missed this pay-per-view, but I don't understand, man. He came back to be in a tag team match with Brutus Beefcake. So one man's ego can never run the show. That's all this was. So not only did it end any kind of potential feud that Hogan and Yokozuna could have had down the line, it also ruined everything that Bret Hart was doing with Yokozuna too. So if you want to talk about a feud ending that absolutely sucked, is this one. And Hulk Hogan stays around for number 1. You already know. I talked about it. It's January 4th, 1999, WCW Nitro. I like to call this the end of the NWO feud, because by this point we had the red and black and we had the black and white, and it was Kevin Nash versus Hulk Hogan. Don't forget, it was meant to be Kevin Nash versus Goldberg, but Goldberg got arrested earlier in the night. So we took something away from the fans, and when it looked like finally the NWO were going to implode properly, we didn't give it an ending, we didn't give it a finish, and we just reunited the black and white, which arguably could have been fine. We all know the big problem with WCW was they never ended the New World Order storyline. They were too terrified about sort of resetting their product. But to just do it this way, with the finger poke of doom. That's right. If you're a brand new wrestling fan, I'm sure you've heard this around the internet, but Hulk Hogan taps Kevin Nash on the chest, he falls down, he pins him 1, 2, 3, he's now the new champion. This was doubly bad because Kevin Nash was the guy to beat Goldberg with a cattle prod thanks to Scott Hall, so he just crapped all over that feud too. And like, it is funny, if you watch it, it will make you chuckle. Their performances are amusing, but that, once again, is when you're watching the show and not thinking about the greater ramifications we're going to have here. So many people, type it into Google right now, will tell you this is when WCW died. Fans were never able to get back on board with it. It was super WWF, and WCW fans did not want that. It's one of the reasons Hulk Hogan did turn heel, because for 2 years they're like, yeah, Hulk, you can beat as many people as you want, but we don't like you. You're that New York guy, and we're down here. But this really was, even I watched it, I was young, and I was like, I don't like that. And within 2 years, it had become a parody, it had become a meme, and WCW was dead. But to kill any feud between Kevin Nash and Goldberg, when Kevin Nash was the guy to defeat Goldberg is totally insane. Now, you can go back now and argue that he shouldn't have lost at Starrcade then either, Goldberg. People will argue that he was getting booed. He had more boos than he had, but you wouldn't even call the reaction mixed. It was just classic. You've been around for a while, so now we're going to give you the opposite cheering to what we have been doing. He could have ridden that for another 6 months minimum, and you should have built it in. You should have teased it more. It just came out of nowhere. Just want to point out, Kevin Nash became the booker 2 weeks before this. No, just throw it in there. You do whatever you want with that information. But, in terms of feuds that ended in such a whimper and actually affected how you watch wrestling and probably told you maybe we should go check out WWF, this has to be number one. It basically shot WCW in the foot. Now, enough about me. Make sure you get in those comments, not what the internet says. What do you think of the worst way to end a feud? Something probably happened in the last few weeks. Bayley versus Alexa Bliss a few years ago. So again, you can come up with anything. Doesn't matter when it happened. These are just mine. Like the video, share the video, and subscribe. Please hit the notification bell. Click the video on the screen for more nonsense content from me. But otherwise, if you're into your fitness, GorillaMind.com/Simon. You go to Simon, get 10% off. I wouldn't advocate these if they weren't good, but they're great. They're the best pre-workout there is. Simon Miller 316 on social media. Simon Miller on Cameo for personalized video messages. They're super cheap because I just like doing them. Simon J. Miller on TikTok. Big Cartel and Pro Wrestling Tees for merchandise. And that's it. Now let's get back to the positive stuff because wrestling is great. And it is the most important of the least important things. I'll see you soon.